Have you ever wondered if there's a difference in quality between Hario products made in Japan and their less expensive branded clones made abroad? Is it worth paying more for the domestic versions? Some people believe that Japanese goods are always better. Others say that Chinese manufacturing has come a long way in recent years and the differences are negligible. I happen to have two Hario brand gooseneck pouring kettles here, one made in China and one in Japan. From a few feet away, they look identical. On close inspection, not quite so much. Let's give each one a thorough exam, shall we?
Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
This kettle, which I've had for some time, was made in China. I chose it because it cost $10 less than one made in Japan. I assumed that the company would enforce their own manufacturing standards and specifications abroad. If Apple can do it, why not Hario? I expected it to be about as good, only less expensive, so a net gain for the consumer. Well, I should have known. I mean, when was the last time we saw one of those? One day, not long ago, I unscrewed the plastic knob here for cleaning. When I replaced it, the anchoring screw came away from the cap. Now, I've worked with my hands for decades, so you can trust me when I say that I did not over-tighten it, even though the knob is big enough for that to happen. It turns out the spot weld here is exceptionally poor. Only a minuscule area actually bonded across the two pieces. In this type of weld, you don't add material. You simply bring the parts together and apply the juice for a prescribed length of time. If you hold it too long, you'll blow a hole in the workpiece. Not long enough, and you might get just a few molecules hanging onto each other. This failure is caused by inadequate hold time. I doubt this part was made according to company specs. There are a few ways to fix this. I wanted to be quick and simply drilled it, locating the flat on the inside and letting natural screw tension hold it in place. I've got a few Hario items that were made in Japan, both of my V60 kits, which look great and work flawlessly. This one needs no preheating because the glass is thin and the plastic funnel draws very little heat. This one is heavier and does need preheating, but it's undeniably handsome. I've also got a siphon coffee maker. Everything here is made well, using quality materials. I don't love the siphon method of brewing, but I respect the device, which I reviewed in an earlier video. Check that out if you like. I'm also the disappointed owner of two other Hario products, this broken kettle and this vacuum jug, both of which were made in China. I reviewed the jug in a previous video, so I'll invite you to watch it rather than repeat myself. I decided to replace the kettle with a slightly more expensive one made in Japan, and to make a video showing you how the two differ, if in fact they do. Let's take a close look. The Japanese one identifies its origins, whereas the Chinese one seems shy about where it came from. Some of these are stamped Made in China, but with this one only the box was labeled. The Japanese kettle has a decent spot weld here on the lid. I'll be surprised if it ever fails. The two lids are slightly different, with the Chinese one being taller. The plastic knobs are made of different materials. The Chinese one is softer, heavier, and has a grippy sandblast texture. It's also slightly convex on top. The Japanese one is lighter, harder, and smooth with a satin texture. It's concave on top, which looks better to me, although the difference is subtle. Both are nicely finished with no palpable seams or burrs, and both have threaded inserts made of metal. The ferrules are slightly different sizes, but you barely notice it. There is a real difference here in the rims. In both cases, the lip is rolled inward, but the Japanese one is completely closed and smooth, whereas the Chinese one remains open, so it has a sharp, exposed edge inside. I don't like it. It's an incomplete job, and it would have been easy to finish. This is pure slack. The openings and the lids are slightly different sizes, which is insignificant, although the fit between them is very important. The lids are designed so that they won't fall while you pour. Alright, the design might be too clever by half, but it works, as you can see. Guess which one this is? The Chinese-made kettle fails every time. I really don't want to worry about the lid falling into a V60 funnel filled with ground coffee and scalding water. To me, this is a significant flaw, like the sharp inside lip and the barely attached screw. That's 3 major disappointments, and we're not done. The spot welds on both handles look good. The wire here is square, while this one uses round stock, and I really don't care. I believe the Chinese wire is lower quality stainless, but it has seen some use, so I'll give that one a maybe. The plastic grip materials are different. As with the knobs, the Chinese one is softer, heavier, and has a sandblast texture. The Japanese one is lighter, harder, and smooth, with a satin finish. The Japanese one doesn't feel as good in the hand. The seams are sharp. They've not been finished. There's also a flaw on the underside, but I'm not sure the camera, especially in my hands, will show it. Both handles are made in 3 pieces. The Chinese kettle feels better initially, but once I finish the Japanese one, which takes only a few strokes with a scraper and a burnisher, it feels just as good. My scraper being a straight edge, which I don't mind using because the plastic is soft and I'm going about this very gently. My burnisher is a stout old screwdriver, which I grip by the blade to avoid scratching the kettle. The spout opening on the Chinese one feels sharp with a palpable burr inside. The Japanese one is finished properly inside and out and feels smooth from every angle. Both spouts are joined well to the body. I don't see a difference. The body is built from 2 pieces. The cone section would have been made with a small flange at the bottom, and the base would be cut oversized with a lip. It's just like a grocery can, which uses the same process, a simple rolled seam. It's a good joint, clean looking and easily watertight, pressure resistant, and it's a lot quicker and cheaper than welding. On the Chinese-made kettle, the seam is wide and square. It's mechanically sound, just a bit clunky looking compared to the smaller, rounded, more refined Japanese example. So to wrap up, the Chinese-made kettle is of inferior quality with slightly inelegant design details. It exhibits poor workmanship and a lack of attention to detail. It's a $15 kettle that costs over $40 because of the Hario brand. When you consider that the genuine article costs only $10 more, I'd say there's no contest. The Japanese version is superior objectively and in terms of value for money. You pay a little more, you get a lot more. Admittedly, I've got a small sample size here, but I can't deny that both of the Chinese-made Hario products I own have been a disappointment to me, while all of the Japanese ones are fine. So I'm kinda sensing a pattern here. I would advise you to avoid Hario products made in China. The company seems unwilling or unable to enforce its own standards on foreign-made products bearing its name. Well, that's all for today. I'll be taking a couple of weeks off due to health issues, and I expect to be back on my feet in mid-June. I'm planning a follow-up to my Eureka Mignon Specialita review and further exploration of the simplest and least expensive ways to make decent espresso. So keep in touch. Cheers!